Good afternoon, party people. Hope all is well. I want to start this out because I keep forgetting to mention this. I want to thank the two party people that sent me $5 each on Venmo toward the puppies. It went straight toward puppy food. And I want to thank the party person that sent me two 30-pound bags of dog food along with the pepperoni treats. The dogs are greatly appreciative, especially those treats. I even gave the puppies some because, after all, it's in the name, right? Pepperoni. So, party people, it's story time. Story time. I actually spent time thinking about this video today. Like 3 hours. I put 3 hours of thought into this. I was trying to figure out a way I can condense this story down and make this one of my short videos. But there's no way. This is about to be the longest video I've ever made. I don't even know if you guys can put up with it. I hope I can keep it under 30 minutes. Hey, Maggie May. Maggie May just joined me. Let me show you guys something here. See if I can get this in the frame properly. I don't know how good that's coming out. This is a picture that's been left out in the rain. It's a picture taken on a disposable camera back in 1999. Can you tell it's a phone booth? It's a phone booth in the Mojave Desert. Well, no. Let me dial that back. It was a phone booth in the Mojave Desert that stood there for decades, man. Decades. Apparently, something I did 23 years ago is starting to gain a little traction on the interwebs. To my disbelief, actually shocked. But someone's talking about a previous life of mine when I had a different name. I was in a different desert, in a different time frame. Have any of you ever heard of the Mojave Desert phone booth? This phone booth was on a plateau in the Mojave Desert about 4,500 feet up. About 17 miles from the nearest paved road and about 35 to 40 miles to the nearest town. It was this isolated phone booth in the middle of nowhere that rang off the hook 24 hours a day from people around the world. It was known as the loneliest phone booth on the planet. Man, this story has stories within stories within stories, and I don't even know how to go through this with y'all. I guess let's just start with, how did a phone booth in the middle of nowhere become worldwide famous? There used to be a mine up there in the Mojave Desert. It mined this cinder rock. And from what I could tell, it was like a decorative rock. the mine was so isolated that the miners had to stay up there weeks at a time, miss their families, so the mining company talked Pac Bell into putting a phone booth 2 miles from the mine. That way the miners could call home, right? Sometime in the 60s, this mine closed, shut down, done. The phone booth sat there, and sat there, and sat there, and sat there. And as far as my understanding goes, a reporter from the LA Times was looking at a map of the Mojave Desert, noticed a phone icon in the middle of nowhere, and went out to it, and there it was standing there. He tried to call it on his cell phone, but he had no cell service, so he wrote the number down and went home and called it, and it rang. Wrote a little story about it. I think it was buried on page 27 in the LA Times. Little human interest story. Apparently got picked up on the AP and started popping up in newspapers around the place, and people started calling it. They would just ring off the hook. Then it spread around the world. There was articles in newspapers in Scotland. In France, it was in a travel magazine. In Istanbul, it was in the back of an underground rock magazine, a little picture of the phone booth and the phone number. So people got a kick out of calling a phone booth in the middle of nowhere, making it ring. Now, of course, when you call a landline, once you connect and make it ring, the hundreds of other calls coming in would get a busy signal, which would lead them to believe that somebody was there answering the phone, but there wasn't. There wasn't. There's an old rancher named Charlie up there squatting on some land with his cattle in his little off-grid house. He occasionally answered the phone. Rarely when he's out checking on his cows, if he drove by it and it was ringing. Then, in the year 1999, and for the party people that are familiar with the times, it was all about the Y2K. Y2K! Oh shit! The power plants are going to go on. The gas pumps are going to shut down. Everything's going to come to a grinding halt because the computers are going to click over to zeros and everything's just going to stop. Y2K, Y2K, prepare for fucking Y2K. I'll be brutally honest with you, party people. I bought into the hype. I thought, holy shit, the grid's going to go down. There's going to be chaos, looting, murder, rape. That don't sound like a good time on New Year's Eve for me. So as the year progressed, and it was coming up on New Year's Eve, which is really funny because it was the year 1999, and a Prince had a song out about 5 years earlier called Party Like It's 1999. The song was really popular. Everybody was going to party like it's 1999, but me. Fuck partying like it's 1999. I'm getting the fuck out of the way. So I started thinking, I was in the San Francisco Bay Area. I was in the East Bay. And I started thinking, where am I going to go where it's safe? Like, where's a place to go where there's nobody and I can just chill out? Because, I was 39 years old. I was way over the club and bar scene anyway, At 39, I was done with that shit. And so I didn't really know what to do. So I started thinking, I remember on road trips, and I'd go through the desert, And I'd look out the window and think, wow, there's nothing here. There's nothing. There's nothing in the desert. So it popped in my head. I thought, hey, yeah, I'm going to go to the desert. I had no internet connection, so I went to, believe it or not, I went to Barnes & Noble Books. And I found me a book on the Mojave Desert. Well, no, I'm sorry. Let me dial that back. I found a book on California deserts. And there was a chapter on every desert. So I sat down with the book. I did not buy it. I sat there and read it and put it back on the shelf. But anyway, I opened it up, and every California desert had its own chapter, and I went down the list. And I picked Mojave because that name just sounded cool. Mojave Desert. All right, I'm going to go to the Mojave Desert. So I read a chapter on the Mojave Desert, found another book on the Mojave Desert, read all about it. So I'm going to take lots and lots of water, lots of food, lots of weed, and yes, I was going to take lots of mushrooms. So I'm planning this trip, and I'm renting a room out of this massive house. It was owned by this nice elderly Chinese couple at the time. I remember him asking me, what are you going to do New Year's Eve? And I said, oh, I'm going to go in the Mojave Desert. I'm going to go hang out away from everybody. And he says to me, did you know there's a phone booth out there that rings all the time? It's really famous. It's the loneliest phone booth on the planet. Really? I'm intrigued. Couldn't tell me where this phone booth was. I had no access to the internet. And even then, there wasn't really much information on this thing. But I knew I was going to the Mojave Desert. And I had me a map. And the one thing I learned in my research is the Mojave Desert landscape changes about every 20 miles. It looks like a completely different desert. So I wanted to spend 3 nights in 3 different spots. But I told myself, hey, man, if I come across that phone booth, I'll get a kick out of taking a couple calls. So I come across the phone booth. I'm going to cut this short. I got to chop this story up. Let me get right to it. I found the phone booth. It was ringing. I got out of my van. I answered it. The first call was from New Zealand. And it went on and on and on. I took it off the hook. I parked my van next to it. I dug a fire pit and decided to hell with my plans of spending 3 nights in 3 different locations. I'm just going to stay here. And I did. I had no idea. So I just start talking, all these people, Istanbul, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, New York, Tokyo, the Philippines, the Netherlands, Ohio. I mean, it was just random. But it was consistent. I took the phone booth off the hook at night to sleep in my van because I felt guilty if I didn't answer the damn thing. It rang all the time. I'm about to jump to another part of the story right here. So, radio stations started calling me. News organizations started getting hold of me. And I'm just gladly talking to them, right? You know, I'm having some rum and coke, smoking some weed, a little bit of shrooms every now and then. I'm just conversation with people on the phone. I had no idea that somewhere along the line, the media picked up on the story that there was a madman living in a phone booth writing out the Y2K. I couldn't figure out why all of a sudden all these radio stations were calling me. Well, all of a sudden I'm doing all these interviews. I'm like, what the hell is going on? Oh, you live in a phone booth. How do you sleep? There's not a lot of room in a phone booth. Dude, I live in a van next to a phone booth. I have a little stool in the phone booth. I have a little notepad. And yeah, I have some candles taped to it so I can see what I'm doing at night. But I mean, I sleep in my van, man. Anyway, bunch of interviews. I go back home. I can't get it out of my mind. I go back. I spend another few days, a week there. I go back. I keep going back. Next thing you know, I'm on Art Bell Coast to Coast. I've been listening to Art Bell for 7 years. Shocked the man wanted to talk to me, but I was on Coast to Coast AM with Art Bell. It became George Norrie later on. It was one of the wildest times of my life. And I could spend hours talking to you guys about the phone calls because I remember most of them. I remember the conversations I had. I remember how wild the whole thing was. Talking to the whole world. Standing on a plateau 4,500 feet up with nothing but Joshua trees and a billion stars over me at night. No lighting. I had the whole so-called Milky Way over my head. It was beautiful. But then I made the phone booth too popular. Too many people started coming out to answer the loneliest phone booth on the planet. The park rangers are working overtime. They released a statement. I'm not going to name her name, but the superintendent of the Mojave Preserve mentioned me in her statement as a reason why they took it out. They took the phone booth away and they blamed me in their statement to deflect the heat from them. And boy, did I get a bunch of shit. People said I was trying to use the phone booth to become famous. Motherfucker, I wasn't trying to become famous. I was trying to avoid people for the Y2K. I had no idea talking to the world on a payphone was going to be such a big deal. I'm reliving all this because I just seen a video clip of me when I was a 40-year-old man standing in that booth talking to someone from Belgium. It's just the memories flooded back in my mind. And then someone played for me the Art Bell interview I did. Apparently it's on Facebook. I wasn't Captain Jack party people. I wasn't even Jack Two Horses. You ready for this? I called myself Desert Chad, the Mojave Desert phone booth operator. I was offered a reality TV show. I was offered a book deal. I was offered a film about my life. It's not that I turned any of that shit. Well, I did turn some of it down, but a couple of things I was interested in, but it just never panned out. That's right, party people. I used to be the Mojave Desert phone booth operator. There it is. I'm pretty sure no one that watches my channel has ever heard of that thing. It was a thing, and it was a big thing in the year 1999 and into 2000. A madman living in a phone booth, writing out the Y2K, talking to the world. It was something. I'll tell you that. You want to see the phone booth again? Let me see if I can focus on it. This probably looks like shit. I'm not going to talk about it anymore. I mean, I could tell you about a bunch of phone calls, but if I start talking about the phone calls, this will be a 3-hour video. But anyway, yeah, it's a previous life of mine. Apparently, the Art Bell interview is online, and there's actually a video. I can't believe this video exists of me actually answering a few calls. There's another guy out there. I'm not going to name his name. I don't know if these people want me to drop their names or not. But there's a guy out there that has a lot of film of me. He was actually shooting a documentary about that phone booth, and I was like the personal connection to it. From what I was told, it got about 70% done, and then they bailed on the project. I'd like to see that footage. All right, party people. Take care. Stay hydrated. Coming to you from that thriving metropolis of Slab City, California. Just above Mexico. Peace and love. Live long and prosper. Bye-bye.